What's up guys, this is Miasin and welcome to my top 50 best decks of the format. I used to make like top 10 best decks and I was like, nah, hold on, I'm disregarding way too many decks. So obviously at this point I've got to make tier list videos. And this is a compilation of 50 freaking decks. Like look at how massive this is. Yes, it's gonna be a long ass video, but it's really important to watch this video until the very end and not be a little bitch, because what really matters about this whole video is not where the decks are, but rather my explanation behind them. Please watch the video until the end. And also smash the like and subscribe button, because without your support, I am nothing. Alright, so we've got the Bernard tier, the tier 1 solid meta contender, rogue, and please get a help, but rather like and subscribe. Yeah, it's the nicest way to put it. Anyways, Tearlaments, this is kind of a rogue deck, but it's not even a good one. I'm not a big fan of how it loses really hard to Shifter. I think it kind of loses really hard to Mochimi Fueros as well. Not too sure about Perolia, but I'm just not a really big fan of the deck. It's very sporadic. Sometimes your hand is the nut, sometimes it does absolutely nothing. And also you can't really play any non-engine in the deck because you really need to play all gas. So I am not a fan. Okay, Labyrinth is very interesting. I really wanted to put it in the tier 1 section, but it is not really good into Fire King, unfortunately. And Fire King I think is going to be a really good deck. So I think it's a very strong meta contender, but it is not one of the best decks that you really have to deck build to beat against. It's really just like, it's better than Rogue because it's still a very good deck because it counters probably what I consider to be the best deck. But apart from that, it doesn't really feel like a fantastic deck overall. Phantasmal Spiral is actually not too bad. The new Primites support, Primordial, whatever, those cards are nasty, like extremely good. This deck loses to quite literally 0 hand traps. It can play both Shifter, Dominus Impulse, and Dominus Purge, all of them, because you use literally no monster effects. And you can also play Heatwave because you only play normal monsters. So this deck can also, and also you can play every single Floodgate in existence. Rivalry goes in, Match there can only be one. Skill Drain, with the limitation of most of those Floodgates, kind of hurt the deck a little bit. Otherwise, it might have been like comparable to Labyrinth, because honestly, even going second, it's not bad. It is unaffected by a lot of interruptions, just because it just doesn't care about so many things. Like, you can make an Appaloosa, and it is the equivalent of just Red Eyes Black Dragon. It does absolutely nothing. The Shark deck is also a cute deck, so the Rage of the Abyss support is kind of solid, and you could theoretically play Shifter in the deck, but then you can't really make Toad because you gotta send something for cost so it doesn't negate. So you can make like Stealth Kraken, and you can still play with Ghost and Match, but that card is limited, and like one of your best combos is, it's so much harder to pull off. So unfortunately, Shark has to stay in the Rogue deck, even with the new support, which I just find to be a little unfortunate because the new support really is that good, but maybe we're gonna be seeing it as an engine in the future, maybe splashed in Raziel. We never know. Okay, so this is gonna be Snake Eye, Fiendsmith, Azamina. I couldn't really get like a picture with like all three, but whatever. If you see Snake Eye Ash, then it really is the Snake Eye deck itself. It's not really Fire King. So yeah, you're not playing any Fire King cards in this deck, and you're still doing really well because it's a very strong deck. 1-card combos can make like 8 interruptions, the 2 Omni Negates because you can make Varudras and the Rhea Silvera. So even if your opponent has like a Dark Ruler, you can still negate that with a DSE Array, not with the Rhea Silvera. I always happen to say stupid things every now and then in, I think I said it in my Fire King video. Whatever, I already forgot, but yeah, no, it's, yeah, it's just, whatever. You understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, Inferno, it sucks. Unfortunately, there's also no other way to put it. This deck right here, Centurion, I actually think, if anything, is a better meta call than Labyrinth. Both decks are very similar because none of them lose to Mochimi Fueros. If you get Fueros on the Centurion deck, well, first of all, it has to be preemptive because you don't really special summon from the deck at all. You really just summon from the spell and trap zone and from the extra deck. So your opponent has to shotgun the Fueros, and then you can just say, you know what, I'm not even going to summon from the extra deck, go ahead. And then you can just synchro summon on the opponent's turn. And you can play a ridiculous amount of non-engine in the deck, not to mention that this deck can also kind of play Shifter and play under Shifter, so it's a very well-balanced deck. And it just has some nice options overall. And the new Rage of the Abyss support is fantastic. The new level 4 Pyro monster means that you have a new search target with Bonfire. Not sure that it really matters, but also you can draw a card when you got an Emblema card and a Centurion card in your grave. And you can also draw a card with the Legatia and search a card with Oxila and stuff like that. So yeah, you can also diversify your interruptions. It's a super cool deck, even without, what's-his-face? Without King Calamity. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, even without this card, it's still, I think, better than Labyrinth, but it should definitely be in this section because going to Mochimi Fueros format, this deck, not too bad. Thunder Dragon, yeah, this might actually end up being even worse than Tier just because it doesn't really do anything other than summoning Colossus, unfortunately. Flunderies, yeah, that's definitely, honestly, if anything, it's not even good anymore. I really don't consider it a decent deck. And also, this deck just gets, well, I mean, destroyed by like one hand trap sometimes, or sometimes not, but Tenpai Dragon, they play like 65 billion hand traps, although I do agree that a lot of them are useless. Like, 4 arrows does literally nothing against this deck, but Parolia wipes the floor with it, and Parolia is still very played in the TCG, sometimes even main deck. Like, Tenpai Dragon can main deck both of the Molchamis, and are you gonna give them 3 draws? I don't think so. And again, they can kind of break your board easily with cards like Regeki and stuff like that. I don't know, I'm just not a big fan. This deck is just not good overall. Sword Soul is maybe just a little better than Thunder Dragon for now, but again, we have to wait for the new Wyrm support, the new Tenyi support. That's absolutely insane. Drytron is, yeah, probably slightly worse than Flunderies. It's not too great. We don't have Beatrice anymore, so you can forget about you utilizing Ava in an actual productive way. Mermail loses very hard to both of the Molchami cards, and it can only really play 12 non-engine, but you can utilize the surprise factor to your advantage, but still, it has to be in the rogue section. Unfortunately, it really pains me to say this. Goblin Biker, again, another one of those rogue decks. I swear to God, everything is a rogue deck right now. For some reason, it's an okay-ish deck. It can play Shifter, it can catch people off guard. If you're really talented with the deck, maybe you can turn it like here, but for now, I'm probably gonna have to put it there because it's a solid combo deck. It reminds me a little bit of Chimera Fiendsmith, as in you got a lot of weird lines that people don't really think about. And again, the fact that it's a combo deck that doesn't really lose too hard to Shifter is kind of appealing. And you can play the Fiendsmith engine, you can do a lot of nasty things. It also reminds me a little bit of Memento, just because you have a lot of different engine cards that do completely different things, but they really complement each other very well. So I honestly really like Goblin Biker. I think it's a respectable deck. Voiceless Voice, I think, is also an incredible meta call in a world where we have Molchami for arrows, because you give your opponent anywhere between 0 to maximum 1 draw, depending on if you had to go normal summon Diviner, send the Trias, and then tribute summon the Novox from the deck. That's about it. You don't have to summon from the extra deck if you don't want to. Dynamondo is completely optional. It's not a necessity. So yeah, it's very interchangeable whether I think that Voiceless Voice is better or worse than Centurion. But at the current moment, I think Centurion has the potential of catching people off guard a little more than Voiceless Voice. So I'm still going to put it there because, again, without King Calamity, everybody just thought that this deck was dead. But I really disagree. I think that Centurion is still a scary threat. Common trait between all these decks right now is especially just the fact that they do not lose to Molchami 4 arrows. That's honestly one of the main aspects that makes you a good deck at the current moment. You do not necessarily need a high ceiling, you just need a very high floor. Anyway, Salamangreat, this is one of the best rogue decks this game has ever seen, but it's always a rogue deck. Yeah, for some reason. Okay, Plant. All right, yeah, okay, yeah. For the meme, it's gonna have to be in the Bernard section, but realistically, what I really think it is, it's probably gonna be like here. Again, I lost to the deck now, so I obviously have to turn it into a meme because I didn't read Sowing's Graveyard Effect. That was like my major misplay. Not making an Omni Negate didn't really matter in Game 3 because yeah, Dark Ruler and Droplet, so I was screwed regardless. Chimera Fiendsmith is also a very good deck, but this one, honestly, I'm not too sure if it's really good into Molchami Foraros, so I'm probably gonna have to put it there. It's way too good to be in the rogue section with all these decks. I think this deck is objectively better than all of them, but because of the fact that you lose really hard to, like, honestly, both of the Molchami cards, it could be a little annoying, and you also lose really hard to Shifter, so I think Tenpai might be a bad matchup for this deck. But at the same time, it's also not the end of the world, because if you get Shiftered, you just set an Illusion Monster. And in a very simplified game state, Tenpai Dragon randomly kind of struggles to beat a Marshmallow. Yeah, it sounds really funny, but if your monster can be destroyed by battle, sometimes Tenpai Dragon, they have to do really stupid lines in order to get rid of it. And then they might not be able to OTK you anymore, at least under Shifter. If there is no Shifter, then yeah, all hope is lost, you are screwed. Anyways, Magical Musketeer, another one of those rogue decks. I think it's probably like there. Yeah, I think Lacrimosa Band kind of hurt the deck a little bit too much. Anyways, Unchained. This deck is not great, but not garbage. It's almost a trap deck. For some reason, maybe I'm gonna put it there. Maybe it's like better than Salamangreat at beating the Molchamis. I don't know. By the way, Goblin Biker, I forgot to mention, it actually loses harder to Parolia than loses to Furaros, because you don't need to spam the board with a bunch of monsters from the extra deck. And you also don't summon that much from the deck. I mean, a little bit, obviously, but not to the point where it's really gonna make you cry, you know? Okay, Despia is also, just like Chimera Fiendsmith, a little too good to be in the rogue section, just because it can FTK with Gimmick Puppet, Nightmare, and stuff like that. But this deck is just shit, honestly. When Branded Fusion, it loses really hard to Retelling Sea, which everybody is playing right now. No, I mean, I really don't like the deck. And also, a lot of people are dropping it overall, so it's not even something that you have to be, like, super afraid of. But again, it's way too good to be anywhere below. Fire King is quite clearly a tier 1 contender. That's not even like a debate. The question is it better or is it worse than Snake Eye, Fiendsmith, Azamina? I think Fire King is better into anything that involves a lot of trap cards and stuff like that, because you don't necessarily need hand traps to beat certain boards. Like, for example, if I'm going second against Voiceless Voice when I'm playing Fire King, I'm actually very confident that I can win with 0 hand traps. Whereas with a deck like Snake Eye, I'm confident I'm gonna lose. It's really bad. And also Snake Eye is drastically worse into Labyrinth than Fire King is. So just because of that, I think Fire King might have some more, like, just a little bit of an edge over Snake Eye Fiendsmith. By the way, when I say Fire King, I'm really talking about, like, pure Fire King without the Snake Eyes, but with the Azamina engine. It's a very good deck, by the way. Don't sleep on it. Anyways, Ritual Beast. This deck can abuse Shifter much better than any other deck. Maybe it's gonna have to be there, but it loses really hard to Molchemi Foraros and Porolia, and I honestly don't think there's a really good plan on how to beat both of them. Like, maybe if there's just Porolia, you can argue, you can go, okay, set a monster, then special summon a monster from the deck with emergency teleport, and then make somewhat of a half board, depending on the situation. Maybe try to make a Protoss by giving your opponent 2 or 3 draws. Realistically, into Foraros, you are just simply screwed, especially if they have both, like, all hope is lost. And you also don't really play hand traps in the deck, so you don't really have a lot of defensive options when you do get hit by the Molchemis. And I don't think, I mean, no, actually, take it back. You definitely can't play the Molchemi cards in a Ritual Beast. Yeah, this deck is not known to play, like, 15 hand traps. It's not like these decks, for example. Still a very good deck, obviously, especially in the right hand. Like, if your name is Herman Hansen or Jonas Singer, this deck is definitely a very good deck. Okay, now we got Vanquish Soul. No, this deck is actually just shit. Like, it's really bad. It has just no edge at all. Okay, you can play Shifter. Ooh, I don't care. Actually, you know what? It doesn't lose to Molchemi Foraros. It's probably even better than Tier, if anything, just because Tier is so shit right now. But anyways, Mimic Ghoul, I don't know, I don't care, honestly, I really don't care. Sorry, Rescue Ace, maybe a little worse than Labyrinth, because this deck is almost, it almost feels like a trap deck, because you go set 4 Turbulence, but you don't really do anything else other than that anymore, because a lot of the really good combos in the deck are now just no longer a thing, like Beatrice, Lacrimosa got banned, so the Fiendsmith engine doesn't even bridge into your engine anymore, which is very annoying, and the deck just lost a lot of consistency. So obviously, if you're talented at the game and you keep drawing Emergency and, like, Airlifter and ways to actually access Turbulence directly, then yeah, obviously this deck is insane. But if you're unlucky, this deck is shit, and you still lose to the Molchemi cards. So honestly, I'm not a super big fan of it, and I still think you lose a little hard to Retelling Sea. I'm not 100% sure on it. It depends on how hard you gotta rely on the Emergency. Actually, it's not the end of the world, because even under Shifter, setting 4 back row is still kind of nice. Okay, Battle Wasp is maybe a rogue deck, but I'm really not sure, so just to piss people off, I'm gonna put in like and subscribe. This section is really just there either for a deck that is complete dog shit, or for a deck that I just do not know, or I'm way too lazy to just rate it. Melodious is absolutely a rogue deck, but honestly, it's a very good one. It doesn't lose too hard to Fuaros, because you can still do productive things on like 1 or 2 summons from the extra deck. And I don't think, actually, you know what? No, backcast summons from the deck. Yeah, shit, that's already 2 draws. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, yeah, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was. But yeah, it's still solid. I don't even know, like, what should be the positions for these decks, but honestly, this deck is really good into hand traps, but very bad into board breakers. To be fair, you can also negate Molchemi Foraros with both Ash and Herald of Orange Light. So maybe this deck has more tools at beating those kinds of cards that actually do beat you. Okay, I don't know why Shark is here again, but yeah, just again, confuse the shit out of people who aren't watching the video. I'm actually, you know what? This is the perfect test to see if people actually do watch my videos or not. I'm gonna put Shark at the very top of tier 1, and if I see stupid comments of people asking, oh, why is Shark in the tier 1 section? It just proves that you guys are dumb. So yeah, actually, I love making these kinds of mistakes. I should be doing it more often. Anyways, Orchist, no. White Forest Runick, very good deck. Honestly, it's amazing. It's incredible into both of the Molchemi cards, maybe less Perolia, but it depends, because sometimes you don't open LZ, you open Sylvie, and you only really give 1 draw to your opponent, and you still make the level 6, and then you search the trap card so you can Synchro Summon and Book of Eclipse on your opponent's turn. And when you're playing a Runick deck, then you still have so many defensive cards that it doesn't really matter too much. You can play Skill Drain, you can play a lot of board breakers in the main deck, and the Runick cards are already board breakers. So honestly, I think this deck is in a solid position. I think it's a cool deck. Kashtira, I also think, is in a respectable position. It's either at the very top of Rogue or bottom of solid meta contender, because it is a shifter deck. It loses to Pearlia, but it doesn't lose to Fuaros. But the ceiling level of this deck is so incredibly low that honestly, not the biggest fan. And I think into Tenpai, this deck is utter garbage. Like, this deck low-key loses so hard to like Regeki and Dark Hole, which every single Tenpai player for some reason is playing right now. That or like Lightning Storm and shit. Anyways, Memento is absolutely among the top tier decks. I honestly have no idea if I place Memento below or above the Fire King and Snake Eyes decks, just because it only plays like 12, maybe non-engine in a 43-ish card deck. It's not that much, but the deck is ridiculously consistent, and it has inherent access to, it has ways of beating Molchimifaros and Pearlia without giving your opponent too many draws. But if you get shifted, you pass. You do nothing. Literally just absolutely nothing. This deck is very bad into shifter, whereas Fire King, at the very least, if you go normal summon Volcanics, destroy a fire, search Ponics, special summon, you got 2 level 1 monsters on the field, because Volcanics can become the level of the monster that you search with its effect, Kikinagashi Fucho, and survive through Tenpai Dragon's OTK. Snake Eye, you can also do the same thing, normal summon Snake Eye Ash, get pop, etc. But that's only if you got Snake Eye Ash or Bonfire. Anything else loses very, very hard to Shifter and Retelling Sea. And Memento also still loses to Retelling Sea because of Memento Fusion. It's a little less the end of the world, because when your opponent summons that Retelling Sea and your Memento Fusion gets banished, you can go Creation King effect to mill 3, and then chain Creation King to destroy the Retelling Sea and the Creation King, and then you still mill those cards. So I think this deck deals a little better with Retelling Sea, and also it can prey on people's ignorance, because nobody really knows how to beat this deck yet. And the new support from Rage of the Abyss is remarkable. It's like Memento Acheron, which has 3 solid effects. Well, the first one is not too great, but the effects to like recycle back a banished Memento card, or like in the grave, or the effect to revive itself back when one of your monsters gets destroyed. So yeah, Memento, clearly one of the best decks. 6 Samurai, no. Gimmick Puppet, I mean, in the hand of someone like Justin Singh, this deck is fantastic. Okay, Exodia is low-key not bad at all. It really isn't bad. So the new support with Blue Eyes of the Heart means that you actually have 1 more starter and 1 more interruption when you draw it, which does matter, because the deck kind of struggled a little bit with just having a lot of ways of threatening your opponent. You didn't have enough interactions. The deck just felt a little too fair, which I didn't really like too much. But now you have ways of closing the game out very quickly, and you can play Shifter in this deck, and you are also unaffected by a lot of the hand traps that your opponent is playing. So yeah, Nibiru will never beat you, Molchimi cards will never beat you, except... No, actually, none of them beat you. Yeah, Fuaros makes your opponent draw 1 card, because the Millennium monsters, they don't summon themselves from the hand. They place themselves from the hand in the spell and trap zone, and then summon themselves from the spell and trap zone. So you're pretty much giving your opponent no draws, and I'm a huge fan of that. So yeah, I can't believe the fact that I'm actually saying that the Exodia deck is not too bad, but honestly, yeah, I really mean it. It's not too bad. The Yugi's deck, on the other hand, that's probably at the very bottom of Rogue. It's way too slow. If anything, honestly, it should be in like and subscribe. This is Dragon Link Control featuring the Metal Morph package. It's honestly a very solid deck, but it's way too slow, and it just pisses me off. Like, it's like 23 hand traps or something ridiculous. I forgot the exact numbers, which is cool and all, but it only takes like 4 years to win, because you do nothing. You summon a Hieratic Seal with a bunch of hand traps and you pass turn, and then you eventually win over time. It's not like the combo version of Dragon Link, so yeah, this deck has pros and cons. But if you draw a bunch of Bestials and you're playing against Ubel, that's not too bad. And then if you draw a bunch of Bestials and you're playing against Fire King, then you're gonna be in a very, 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 very bad mood. Okay, next up is Purely, which is always gonna be a very good rogue deck or a very bad solid meta contender, but honestly at this point, whether I place it here or there doesn't really matter too much, but yeah, it's a good deck, I gotta respect it. Blackwing is like somewhere in the rogue section, I don't even know, I don't even care. Probably there. Yeah, there we go. Shadows to Kanak. Yeah, the GOAT. Anyways, Lunalight. Just no. Okay, Raid Raptor. Also just no, even though I love the deck. Okay, there we go. Ubel. An actual good deck for once. This deck is also very interchangeable with these decks. This is the reason why this section, I genuinely just have no idea where to place them. Just because each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. Ubel, for example, it is very oppressive going first. It doesn't lose to Retelling Sea. And it's just... an overall good deck. I mean, it's really strong. It's not too bad going second, and it has a lot of natural counters to a bunch of things. So honestly, I really like this deck. I think it's... Anyways, the Sprite deck is also a very, very strong rogue deck. I mean, it doesn't lose too much to 4 arrows, but it does lose considerably harder to Parolia. However, with the Fiendsmith engine, you can fix that issue, which I like a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of nice tools. And also, I believe there is someone who topped 16 YCS Cancun with Sprite. So yeah, shoutouts to him. If he's watching this, you are the GOAT. Sprite is always a cool deck to see in action, and it's always a deck that's gonna exist, and it has a lot of natural resources in order to beat just about everything, really. I want to say this deck's worst nightmare is its follow-up, really. That's about it. Anyways, Phantom Knight, it's really in the same league as like Raid Raptor and stuff. It's a cute deck, but it's not fantastic or anything. Marin says, okay, yeah, that's also like Sword Soul level, maybe better, maybe worse. I don't know too much. All right, this is way too obvious. Yeah, Tenpai Dragon best deck. Well, I mean, obviously Plant is the best deck because of the meme, right? Because I lost to it, but objectively speaking, Tenpai Dragon is the best deck of the format. I don't have to elaborate on that when you can play 24 handshots and 40 cards and still play 15 out of 16 one-card combos that can OTK. This is absurd, unheard of in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and honestly, it doesn't really feel like this deck's name should be Tenpai Dragon. It should be Handshots / non-engine turbo featuring a Tenpai Dragon engine, because honestly, that's kind of what it is. Like, majority of the deck would be non-engine cards, not even Tenpai Dragon cards, which is ridiculous. It's completely absurd. But yeah, this deck has practically zero bad matchups just because there's such a high likelihood of drawing a bunch of non-engine cards that you're honestly always gonna see them. Anyways, Runick Stun, not the best deck. A lot of floodgates got hit, so I really don't think this is great. You shouldn't play this deck, honestly. Labyrinth is much better if you want to play a trap deck. Same thing with Centurion, and even Voiceless Voice kind of has that control aspect to it, but even though it's kind of like more of a mid-range deck. Eldritch, this is worse than Labyrinth, but it's still a decent deck. I don't know if it should be in solid meta contender, but I think if you deck build your deck in a very similar way as Labyrinth, with like the equation cannon and everything, you should be able to make it work. I think it's a solid deck, honestly. I respect it. And then we've got Icebearer, which is also another rogue deck. Maybe a little worse than Flunderies. The exact position doesn't really matter too much. As a matter of fact, I think Blackwing... No, Blackwing is better than Flunderies. There we go. Yeah, and also, is it better than Gimmick Puppet? Maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe no. Lightsworn, the last deck here, I genuinely do not care where I place this deck because it is not relevant. It cannot really play non-engine cards, so obviously it's a rogue deck, and that's about it. So maybe I'm gonna put it there just for the lols. But yeah, I'm relatively satisfied with this tier list. You guys let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below. Again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very, very soon. Peace.